So we are reading Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan. We are in chapter 11, page number 91 of the book and 113 of the PDF.
Anger and other negative emotions. Red has always been associated with anger. However, one day my very happy, energetic 11-year-old son, full of joy while playing, looked like figure 11-1A, with bright red and orange streamers radiating from his head. The quality of the color red is what denotes anger. Bright red-orange is not anger. It is related to vibrant life force. The full blowing reaction of the woman in the primal scream workshop is depicted in 11-2b. She is having a large number of feelings all at once, which accounts for so many colors. They are of high intensity, which shows in the aura as brightness and the strong rays emitted off the body in straight lines.
So we have seen this when we take the aura pictures with the Progen Aura camera. Most of the younger children, who don't have too much of baggage and don't have any kind of a trauma associated with their parents having issues and all, generally we found that they had bright red auras, right? Generally, a red aura person can be an angry person, can be a very physically aggressive kind of a person. But when it turns out in children, it actually shows high level of physical activation and activity. Okay, and over here, she's also talking about the lady. Now, naturally, the lady is connected with a lot of emotions, so a lot of colors are radiating out of her, and they are happy emotions. So naturally, happy colors will be emitting from her.
Someone who is angry has a dark red color. When this anger is expressed, it shoots off the person in flashes like bolts of lightning or round sparks that move away from the person, as shown in figure 11-2c. I have seen this many times in group and sessions. In contrast, figure 11-2d shows an example in which the person did not release her anger and pain as the red spot emerged from the throat area. It slowly moved outward. A moment later, the group leader made a comment to her that was, in my opinion, hurtful. At this point, the red spot quickly moved back towards her body and into her heart area. When it hit her heart, she started crying. The crying was not of the cathartic type. It was rather, poor me, the victim. My interpretation of this event is that she had stabbed herself in her heart with her own anger.
So again, these figures are there in the PDF. You all can scroll down in the PDF and see these figures. So in the first case, the anger is actually shooting out of this person and running out in blobs, right? In the second case, the anger is coming out, but the facilitator actually said something back and it pushed the anger back into her system. So many times, we actually start hurting ourselves with our own thoughts. That's why it becomes very important for us to really monitor our thoughts. What are we thinking? Also over here, she mentions the poor me attitude. This is again something that we read in Celestine Prophecies. In Celestine Prophecy, the control drama aspects, right? There are 4 control dramas. The first control drama is the intimidator. The second one is the interrogator. The third one is the aloof. And the fourth one is the poor me. So over here, when you play the poor me or the victim game, you are attempting to absorb energy from the people around you by being the poor me, right? Because they start having compassion and care for you. So you absorb the energy from them. But whenever we are playing a control drama, we are acting like a leech. We are not found integrity within ourselves. We are looking for energy like a leech. When a leech attaches itself to anyone, it sucks the blood out of the person. So we have become energetic leeches whenever we are playing the control drama.
Fear, on the other hand, has a whitish grey prickly appearance in the aura, as in white with fear. It is very unpleasant looking and has a repulsive odor. Envy appears to be dark, dirty, green, and sticky, as in green with envy. Sadness is dark grey and heavy, as in the cartoons of people with dark clouds over their head. Frustration and irritability will probably have dark reddish tones, red with anger, but are mostly apparent from the irregular vibrations that beat against another person's energy field, causing very unpleasant sensations. Usually, one's friend reacts to this interference by trying to elicit a direct expression of negative feelings which are more pleasant to deal with. For example, one will say, "Are you angry?" Another will blurt out angrily, "No." Thus, some of this annoying interference is released.
Okay, so every color has its own propensity, right? Over here, she's saying that with her clairvoyant vision, she's saying that a dirty, whitish, prickly aura is there, right? And this can actually be felt with a hand also. When someone is operating out of fear, there's a smell also which comes. That is why they say that animals can actually smell your fear, right? It's there in the auric field, and that is how the animals can sense it. Over here, also these sayings which are there, like green with envy. For jealousy, they'll say a yellow, dirty fellow, and all those things which we used to say. It actually has a connotation, right? Green is a very good color. That's what we saw in the Progen aura camera. It's the transformative color between the physical and the material and the spiritual. But having said that, when you are stuck in the middle, right, you're not spiritualistic, you're not materialistic, but you are operating out of jealousy, then also dirty green can come into the aura. And many times people will have dark auras. When they're carrying a lot of negativity around them, the energy actually becomes very prickly, and it can be seen as a dark field around a person. It can actually be sensed also. You can actually feel it when you get in association with these people. Yes, Renuji.
Bhaiya, but when we learnt about the green, it was supposed to be of love.
Where?
Green color. In one of our workshops, when we learnt green was associated with
When did we
love.
learn? We've not done anywhere.
In one of the, yes, Bhaiya, and the red was energy, and when you want to give to someone.
You see, I'll tell you, every color has its uplifting qualities and depleting qualities. Okay. So when red is bright red, and that's what she's also saying, it shows energy levels. It shows brightness. It shows physically vibrant. Now, if it gets dirty, then it shows that the person is irritated, is angry, is frustrated. Okay. When we used to take the Progen aura cameras, we used to take the pictures, there were certain symbols which used to come. Generally, I found that many people who had red auras also tended to have back problems because there was a lot of frustration, a lot of anger in them, right? Now, when you look at green, green is a transformative color. Okay. So when we used to get green, most of the time the person was not well, either mentally, physically, or emotionally, right? Or there was some major transformation taking place in their life. That is when green used to come. Now, I don't know which program you heard that green was for, green is also a color of healing, right? That's why you'll find that many hospitals in the olden times used to be colored green. When you look at green in nature, it's very therapeutic.
Therapeutic.
Right? So when it is therapeutic, it also says that due to therapy also works with love, right?
Yeah.
So green can have a connotation of love also. But when it gets dirty, it gets mucky, right? Then you're feeling jealous. Then when you're jealous or you're green with envy, what they say, and it's a very dirty green. There's a difference between a bright green and a dirty green. So every color has its own shades. Okay. And then we have to operate within the shades.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Effects of drugs on the aura. Drugs like LSD, marijuana, cocaine, and alcohol are detrimental to the brilliant, healthy colors of the aura and create etheric mucus, as does disease. Figure 11.2e shows the effect of snorting cocaine on one person's aura. Every time he would snort cocaine on Saturday night, at his Tuesday afternoon session, he would have a lot of gray, sticky etheric mucus on the right side of his face and head, while the left side would remain relatively clear. I asked him if he used one nostril more than the other. He thought not. My repeated confrontations, I could tell whenever he did it, and a graphic description of his etheric snort helped him stop this habit.
So again, whenever we are taking drugs, right? Now today we get a high from drugs simply because they are actually mimicking the chemicals that are produced by the body. But when the body produces these chemicals, it is producing it in a precise manner, in a precise timing, in a precise dosage. But when we start taking the drugs externally, we do not have control over it. And then that can lead to a lot of issues, right? And as far as the clairvoyant vision is concerned, it feels like muck, it feels like kichad, it feels like mucus around the field of a person, and it's very visible. There was one occasion where I had gone to this thing place, and I had actually told this person that you're having drugs, because it was very clearly visible in his auric field. Okay, so it is not something that you can hide. It is all there. You can it's all seeable. And actually, once you start realizing what these things are doing to you, then it allows you to transcend it. Like in this case, description of that field which was there around him allowed him to get out of that habit. That's why being aware is extremely important in whatever we do.
Figure 11.2f shows an aura of a man who had taken many LSD trips and drunk a lot of alcohol. The aura is dirty greenish brown. The dirty green spot, which slowly moved downward and was not released, correlated to his mixed, undifferentiated, withheld feelings of anger, envy, and pain. Had he been able to separate these feelings, understand their basis, express and release them, I'm sure the spot would have separated into brighter, clearer shades of the corresponding colors, red, green, and gray, and then moved on. However,
so this is important over here. What he's saying is that what she's saying is that if you can shift your perspective, right, then even this mucus and this dirty aura can shift. So having the ability to shift our perspective. Now this comes back to our grid, the resilience grid. Where are you operating from, right? Most of the time, all these descriptions that she's giving of dirty mucus and all that stuff will all be there only if you are operating from the left side of the grid. As soon as you shift your side to the right side, all this stuff cannot exist because it doesn't resonate with the right side of the grid.
However, due to the amount of dark contamination of his field, this man has a lot of energetic cleansing to do to remove his etheric mucus before he can raise his energy level high enough to clarify and move his feelings.
So many times, when we go into a house also, we see this etheric muck on the floor of the house, and sometimes it's hanging on the walls, on the furniture. And one thing that I've learned over the years is that what can clean it is kapoor, camphor, right? You sprinkle camphor all over the place. You put the camphor in the water with which you are wiping the floor, and then slowly, slowly the etheric muck can be washed off as far as uh, a house or an office is concerned. But when we are doing it for ourselves, of course, cleansing works. But I think more it's about our perspective. The more the thoughts, the more your level of consciousness starts to evolve, the less all this stuff can stick with you because there's no resonance left.
An apparent weight in the aura. Figure 11.2G shows a man who also had indulged for years in drugs like LSD and marijuana, with the resulting dirty green aura. The waste from these experiences appears in the upper right. It appears to exhibit weight because he always held his head at an angle which seemed to balance the form. This form always remained in the same position week after week. When I pointed it out to him, he was able to see it. He used a mirror. In order to remove this form, he would also, in addition to what has already been mentioned, have to get off drugs and cleanse his field. In addition to body work, I recommend fasting and a cleansing diet. He would then be able to increase his energy field strength and be able to break into this accumulated waste to dissipate it.
So whenever we want to create shifts in our life, we have to shift the way that we are doing things, right? If we feel that we can keep doing the same thing and we can rectify whatever is happening in our life, it is not possible. So where she's clearly saying that she can break out of this dirty aura that he has around him, but he has to go into a detox. He has to cleanse the way that he's eating, cleanse the way that he is sleeping, cleanse the way that he is actually being. So recommended fasting and a cleansing diet, right? So diet is important. Water is important. Sitting in the sun is important. What you're thinking again becomes important. For example, when we do the excursion workshop, most people comment that we've never been to the restroom so many times in a single day, right? What is happening? Because the body is going into a very relaxed state, a lot of detox starts to take place. And one of the ways that we release the toxins that are accumulated in the body system is through elimination through the urinary system, right? So that's why you go so much to the toilet. So like that, whenever anyone wants to start cleaning their system up, they have to go into something which allows the body to be able to detoxify itself. So over here, she's saying that she needs to go into a light diet, in a cleansing diet which is uplifting and would normally be an alkalizing diet.
An interesting display of apparent weight associated with mucus consistency is shown in figure 11.2H. This woman had been a good girl type for years and finally just reached her rebelliousness. She stopped being so nice and got very angry during her session. She knocked down the chairs in the room and even stomped on the tissue box, tearing it to pieces. She left the session feeling liberated. However, the next week she contracted and withdrew very deeply and came into my office with a terrible headache. She moved carefully and held her shoulders up around her ears. At this point, I observed a large blob of mucus on top of her head. Apparently, the mucus had been released in the earlier session and had accumulated there.
Yeah. So when you are into therapy and we are touching these dark spots, at times they can start oozing out, right? And get stuck externally because we are carrying a lot of muck inside us, right? That's why the cleansing process, the releasing process is very, very important. We see this in biofield tuning also. That's why we are very, very clear that we want to establish the Earth star and Sun star before we start moving into the timeline, because stuff can be released. And if the system is not resilient enough to be able to handle what is released, it can start creating problems, right? So, like this, in this case, in the session, she released a lot of anger and that got stuck in her body because she didn't maybe ground and have processes in place which could release what had been accumulated and what had come out of a system and let it go back and ground it into the earth.
The phenomenon of toxin release from bioenergetic work is well known. Strong energy flow releases toxins held in the tissues. Sometimes people get sick up after deep work. That sickness is called the fluky flu. My client was no longer rebellious but now exhibited the rather masochistic behavior of self-punishment.
This is important, right? So many times people will get sick after energy work. So after your healing, people will get sick. This used to happen a lot when we were doing energy field rectification in the beginning. We used to go into a house and rectify everything. Everything used to get rectified. And normally when we left the house, we used to tell people that don't be surprised if you fall sick and you develop fever, because the body cannot handle that shift in energy. Likewise, when we are doing tuning or any kind of healing, we have to be able to monitor how much can the system of a person take and be very careful about it. Otherwise, we can start having depleting results or negative results. Like, so what she's saying, the fluky flu. And then when this happens, at times the guilt is also released from the person, and then the person can actually start hurting or harming himself or herself. So we need to be very careful. We need to tread very gently when we are indulging in these practices.
Bhaiya, can I ask you
Yes.
something?
Yes.
Bhaiya, is that the reason when sometimes when we do that in one of the workshops, I remember I was uneasy and you said do grounding.
Correct.
And I needed to really do grounding. Is it because there's some energy I could not take?
No. So something may have released in your system. I don't remember when that happened.
So it got released.
Correct. So see, I'll tell you, the body holds score. Okay. Anything that happens to you is in the body. When we do any kind of therapeutic tool or we shift our states of consciousness, that stuff which is stuck starts to get released. Right. Now, if our system is not ready to handle that onslaught, then we can start falling sick. We can start getting heady and all that. And one of the best ways to handle it is through the process of grounding, walking on grass, hugging a tree, doing some kind of physical exercise. So over here, what she's saying is I started the session with physical mobilization, right? So many times when we start mobilizing, we start moving our body, that stuff gets released. It's like the auric field, right? When I start shaking, like suppose you want to clean something, right? If you shake it, the probability is that it will get cleaned, right? So like that, we start shaking our body to release that stuff which is stuck, and then do grounding, it will ground it. Okay. So this happens all the time.
Okay. Thank you, Bhaiya.
I suggested starting the session with physical movement. I asked her to bend forward in a kind of whipping motion with her upper half. As she did so, the mucus ball sprang forward, extending about 2.5 feet in front of her. She started to fall forward as if from a large weight. Figure 11 to 8. She caught herself, and then the mucus sprang back to her head as if pulled by elastic. She almost fell over backwards. She was too afraid to repeat the movement, so we did a lot of body work, focusing on feeling her legs, standing firmly on her feet, and feeling connected to the earth, supporting her. This process is called grounding. By the end of the session, the mucus had distributed itself in a thin layer over her body. Her headache was gone. It took several weeks of body work to rid her of the entire mucus layer.
So again, she also mentions grounding over here. So again, in the workshops, we are constantly saying that grounding is a very important tool and all of us must use the process of grounding. Now, unfortunately, what has started to happen, I think we mentioned this yesterday also, that all of us are living, most of us are living in a Faraday's cage. We've started wearing rubber slippers. So the grounding gets very badly affected. So we must be consciously aware that we need to ground ourselves on a regular basis.
Exercise to experience apparent weight of the energy field. An exercise done often in Aikido classes will help you have an experience of the effect of weight in the aura. Have two people stand on each of your sides. They are going to try to pick you up by grasping your upper arm at the top and at the bottom. When they pick you up for all of these exercises, make sure that they do it in a way that lifts you straight up rather than pushing you to one side first. That may break your roots. First, do it for practice to see how heavy you feel. Sense how easy or difficult it is for them to pick you up. Now, take some time to send your energy field upward. Think up. Focus on the ceiling. When you have a good focus that you can keep there, ask them to try to pick you up. Was it easier?
Okay, so, our thoughts have a lot of weight and we don't realize how much weight our thoughts have. So there was one occasion I had gone to visit one person's house and I saw in one corner a lot of things were dumped. So I asked them, why have you dumped this? They said, southwest corner, it has to be heavy. I said, okay, I'll show you what heavy is. So there was a Dorani and a Jethani, right? So two sister-in-laws were there. And so I told the elder one that pick up the younger one. And she very easily picked up the younger one. And then I told the younger one, decide you don't want to be picked up, right? And then I told, this was within 5 seconds. And then I told the older one, now pick up the younger one. She could not pick up the younger one, right? So what she's saying in this experiment is that the moment you focus your energy to lift up, it will become easier for the people around in this exercise to lift you up. So what I think is she's attempting to explain is our thoughts also have weight and our thoughts are connected with our auric field. So the auric field technically has weight.
Now give yourself time to focus on increasing your connection with the ground. Grow roots from your fingertips and the bottom of your feet into the ground and deep into the earth. Concentrate on the strong and powerful energetic connection you have with the ground. When you have a very good focus, ask them to pick you up again. Are you heavy to pick up? Probably.
So again, your thoughts have weight. This was also seen, there was a story when Angad went to Ravan's court as a messenger, and then he made a statement, I think there, if I'm right, anyone knows the story, please correct me, that what will you move Lord Ram? You cannot even move the foot of one of his dasas, of one of his associates, right? And he planted his foot there. And none of Ravan's people could actually move his leg. So our thoughts have a lot of power. They have a lot of energy, provided they are focused properly. And this exercise, you can try it at home. If you can get two people to lift you, decide you want to be lifted up, and you'll find they'll easily lift you. Decide you don't want to be lifted up, and they'll have trouble lifting you. The same two people within a few minutes of time.
Dissociated thought forms in the aura. In the course of my years of bioenergetic practice, I have observed a phenomenon which I refer to as moving spaces of reality. These spaces I find similar to those described in the study of topography, where a given set or domain contains a set of characteristics which then define the mathematical operations that are possible within that domain. In terms of psychodynamics, there exist spaces of reality or belief systems containing groups of thought forms which are associated with conceptions and misconceptions of reality. Each thought form contains its own definitions of reality, such as all men are cruel, love is weak in control is safe and strong. From my observations, as people move through daily experience, they also move through different spaces or levels of reality defined by these groups of thought forms. The world is experienced differently in each group or space of reality.
So we all operate with belief systems, what we believe and what we don't believe. And this is one of the main purposes of all the Monroe processes, to help us to see what is, to become aware of it, and to transcend our belief systems, right? Whenever we have a belief system, we are creating a barrier for ourselves. And if you have a group of people who are having the same belief system, it becomes powerful, right? Now, today, we live in a consensual reality. All of us are creating this reality that we exist in, right? If you shift your focus of attention, you can actually change your reality, because your reality is dependent on your perception. So what she's saying over here is that these thought forms are always there. And when you move into a field of a particular thought form or a belief system, it is bound to affect you, right? So every space has its own energy field, its own process of processing things. And this is true for cities also. I used to travel a lot previously, and I had observed, like when you landed on in Bombay previously, not now, you started running. So the energy of Bombay was you can't sit still, you have to start running. The energy of Delhi was constantly name throwing, right? You wanted to show that you're very big, you're connected, right? So a lot of connectedness, right? Egocentric centricity was very high. That was the kind of attitude that most people living in Delhi would have, because they would be influenced by the field of the city. If you come to Calcutta, it was a pretty laid back kind of an attitude. When you came to Calcutta, you automatically slowed down. That was the field that you were walking into when you landed in Calcutta. So this is what she's saying here, that every belief system, every kind of thinking process, every kind of group has its own field. It's also there in the Monroe process. This is something that we actually experience in the Lifeline program. You have the belief system territories, where when you're going into altered state of consciousness, even not only in the C1 reality, on this in this 3D reality that we exist, even in higher states of consciousness, these thought forms actually exist, and group of people get together to create an alternate reality which is different from this reality but is very similar, because they want to create it over there, and then you again get stuck there also. So it's very important to be aware if we are moving into a field which can have an adverse influence on us.
These thought forms are energetic, observable realities which radiate colors at various intensities. Their intensity and definition of form are a result of the energy or importance a person has given them.
Now, this is very important, right? This one statement that she's made here, their intensity and definition of form are a result of the energy or importance a person has given them, right? So if you are focusing your attention on a particular thought form or a particular field, it will have a bigger influence on you. So we need to start being aware of what we are making ourselves aware of and what are we paying attention to. That becomes very, very important.
Thought forms are created, built, and maintained by their owners through habitual thoughts. The more definite and clear the thoughts, the more definite the form. The nature and strength of emotions associated with the thoughts gives a form its color, intensity, and power.
So again, when we are having today, we can't create anything without thinking of it, right? So whenever in manifestation, whatever we are thinking is going to manifest for us. So whenever we are existing in a particular reality, we are putting energy into it to maintain it. So whenever, see, I'll tell you, you bring two people to the same room, their perception of the room will be different. If you ask them, you take them to a same room and then take them out and then ask them to describe the room. They will describe the room differently. Why? Because whatever they are interested in, that is what they are going to be focused on, right? So if a person is creating a depleting mindset, the person will always see depletion around him, right? Because that's the thought form that they are maintaining. That's what they are resonating with. So when you create a thought form, you have to give energy to it to maintain it. So it clearly says over here that the thought forms are created, built, and maintained by their owners through habitual thoughts. So what you are thinking will create your reality, right? That's why it becomes very important again, where are we operating from? What is the level of consciousness that we are operating from? If we are stuck in depleting states of consciousness, then we are going to create depletion in our life. And we are constantly saying this, that no manifestation can take place from the left side of the grid. You can only manifest things from the right side of the grid. Manifest what? Which is uplifting. You can manifest from the left side, but it will always be depleting. It will always be pulling you down. Okay, so this becomes extremely important.
These thoughts may or may not be conscious. For example, a thought form can be built from constantly thinking of a fear like, he is going to leave me. The creator of the thought form will act as if it is going to happen. The energy field of the thought form will affect the field of the person it is about in a negative way. It will probably have the effect of pushing the person away. The more this is given power by putting energy into it, either consciously or unconsciously, the more effective it will be in creating the feared result.
Okay, so now this is very important. This is something that we read in the power versus force also, right? For anything to manifest, an attractor field has to first be created before it can be manifested, right? Now, how is an attractor field created? By your thought forms. So a thought form is an attractor field. Now, if I am going to be focused on something which is depleting and acting like a leech on my system, then that is what I am going to create around me. So over here, what it says is, the more this is given power by putting energy into it, either consciously or unconsciously, the more effective it will be in creating the feared result, right? So whatever we are thinking will manifest. Sometimes we negate our manifestation by thinking one thing and then negating it, thinking one thing and negating it. If we want to manifest stuff, we need to have clarity of thought. When the clarity of thought is there, that is when good manifestation actually starts to take place. Yes, Rinoji.
Bhaiya, that means that we can even create negativity. That means
101%. Who do you think creates negative results for you? You yourself. A person who is constantly critical will always find something to criticize around them. A person who's constantly depressed will notice only depression or depressive things around them. Someone who's in an uplifting trend will only notice uplifting things. So what is the state of consciousness with which you are noticing things? What are you noticing? We need to start becoming aware of it. Now look at yourself.
then it's so difficult for.
No, it's not difficult. Okay. Now, you were constantly saying, I can't. We're coming back to that. So you were constantly saying, I can't, right? So now what was happening? Even if you could do something, you are saying, I can't, so you couldn't do it. Now, since you've dropped, I can't, don't you think you're doing more stuff? Now, maybe in front of us, you're not saying, I can't, and the rest of the time you're saying, I can't. So that I can't vouch for that. But at least over here, now you're not saying, I can't, right? So what is happening?
Okay.
You're being able to do stuff. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what were you creating?
At least you're ready to try.
Exactly.
You're ready to try then.
So by saying I can't, I'm creating a field where I can't. When I say, yes, I will do it, I'm creating a field which will allow me to do it, right? That's what she's saying over here.
Okay. Thank you.
Usually, these thought forms are so naturally a part of the personality that the individual doesn't even notice them.
Now, this is very important, okay? Because it is just there. So we have this statement when we are doing the excursion, like a fish doesn't notice the water which it is in because it is in it, right? So when you are in that thought form and it is a constant presence in your life, you will not even notice its presence. This is something that we experience in the biofield tuning also. Whenever we have a traumatic situation, it is stuck in the field, right? Now it has been stuck there for so long that we don't even notice it. But when the tuning fork comes in and starts to change its vibration and the sound that it is making, we start noticing it. And that is when the clearing starts to take place, right? When we notice something, then only we can clear it. But if we don't notice it, we've got used to it, then you will not notice it.
They begin to form in childhood and are based on a child's reasoning, then integrated into the personality. They are like extra baggage a person carries about within himself, not noticing their effect, which is very great. These conglomerate thought forms or belief systems attract many effects in one's outer reality.
So again, we keep saying in awareness that you're carrying rocks in your backpack unnecessarily. If something is not serving you, drop it, right? It doesn't make sense to hang on to it. It simply doesn't make sense. Anything that is putting you on the left side of the grid is not worth it. Just stop paying attention to it and get it out of your system, right? So it very clearly says that if you're carrying these rocks in your backpack, they will attract other rocks to accumulate, right? So it's very important we start becoming aware of anything that is depleting us and getting rid of it, right? Just dropping it like a hot potato.
Since these forms are not deeply buried in the unconscious, but are on the edge of the consciousness. They can be retrieved through such methods as core energetic body work, word association games, and meditation. When the forms are brought to the focus of the consciousness by expressing the feelings associated with them and releasing those feelings, they are then possible to change.
So this is something that is done. Those of you who've done the excursion workshop, there's an exercise that we do, release and recharge, right? So in that exercise, you're releasing the fears, the emotions which are the fears are covering, and reintegrating the pure energy that was generated but was misinterpreted by you or by others around you. And once you reintegrate that, then you start experiencing a little bit of freedom. Ultimately, what is freedom? When you have no baggage whatsoever, you have a clean run, you're doing whatever needs to be done without any kind of imbalance or any kind of belief system restricting what you are doing and experiencing, right? So this release becomes important. And one of the ways that we release is to bring attention to the particular incident that generated that thing which is keeping you stuck. And it works very, very beautifully.
This process allows a clearer view of the assumptions about reality which makes up the forms. When the invalid assumptions, remember, they are based on logic from childhood, are uncovered, seen, and released, they can be replaced by a more mature, clear view of reality, which in turn leads to the creation of positive life experiences.
So most of these habits, most of these characteristics are created by us or get created when we are in the age bracket of 1 to 6, right? That is when we learn the most. So that is why parents have to be very, very careful as to what the experiences that they are giving to their children. Now, naturally, if parents are young and they're not exposed to all these things, then they also don't realize what they are doing. But these thought forms, these assumptions are created in childhood. And the child is creating them with the level of intelligence that the child is operating at. Going forward in the future, when you start maturing, if you look at that same thing which happened, it may not be as important as the importance the child had given to that particular incident to create that particular habit or that thought form or that attractor field. Until that attractor field is active in your field, you are going to attract the same kind of experiences. So it becomes very important to clear, right? So there are various meditations that we have that actually do inner child work to clear the inner child. That what did you experience? What is that experience? And look at it from a more mature attitude of what you know today. So that thing may not be as important to you as it was when you were a child. And then the clearing can start taking place.
This process allows a clearer view of the assumptions about reality which make up the form. When the invalid assumptions, remember they are based on logic from childhood, are uncovered, seen, and released, they can be replaced by a more mature, clear view of reality, which in turn leads to the creation of positive life experiences. Within some personalities, these forms are interconnected, and the person's consciousness is rarely immersed totally in one space without being aware of most of the others. So the person maintains a high degree of integration in his daily life. On the other hand, a different type of personality may float from one space of reality to the other with the alacrity, but may not be aware of any connectedness between them. He may not be able to integrate or understand this dynamic flow and thus lives in confusion, especially when a particular chronic cyclical flow is triggered off internally. He may then be caught in an automatic sequential flow from one thought to the next, while remaining hopelessly entangled and unable to free himself from this chronic cycle until the whole thing is played out.
So what this would imply is that our own centeredness, how centered we are, how integrated we are, will be the result that we will see in our lives, whether we are stable or whether we are unstable. That's why centering, being one with ourselves, being one with our reality, being aware of what is happening around us and how are we interacting with it, holding our centeredness, creating a witness attitude, stillness consciousness, all these things which are being spoken about now, wholeness, all these things start to come into play. The more integrated we are, the less affected by these fields that we are constantly moving through will have an effect on us. So it also basically talks about resilience. How resilient are we within ourselves? This is something that we learn in the Resilience Advantage program to be able to actually understand how we can build resilience within ourselves.
He may then move to a different state of reality only because the cyclical action of the thought form has exhausted all of the available energy. He will not know how he moved out of the cyclical pattern and therefore will probably be unable to extricate himself from the cycle the next time it is triggered.
So what she's talking about here is patterns, right? And we are constantly talking about patterns in all the programs and in all the sessions. That today, if you notice a pattern in your life, you need to pay attention to it because the universe is attempting to draw your attention to it. That means you need to learn a lesson. Now, if you've not learned the lesson, then these patterns will constantly get triggered. The idea is to become aware of the pattern and then to transcend it. Now, what she's saying over here, that till you don't transcend it, it will constantly get triggered. Okay. So that's why awareness again becomes very important.
These states of reality can be euphoric, as in the state in which a person thinks he will accomplish great things and become famous or rich. But he is not aware of the tremendous amount of practical work ahead of him before he can attain such a goal.
So again, building castles in the air, right? But not being prepared to do the work required to achieve it. This becomes a big issue, and it is an issue with a lot of people, let me tell you.
Or it may be an opposite effect in which the person sees himself in a much worse a state than is the case.
So again, this again is a problem with people because they don't operate out of gratitude. If you do not appreciate what you have, you will never get what you want. So they're constantly depleting what they have. They're constantly criticizing what they have. So they don't achieve or get what they want.
In either state, he is not in truth about himself or his life situation. In both states, he is probably seeing a part of himself and exaggerating it. He may have the potential to create all the great things he sees for himself in the first state, but much work and time is needed. On the other hand, in the second negative state, he sees a part of himself that he needs to change, but forgets that change is possible.
So again, if you forget that you need to do the work, you need to move your butt, right? You will not get what you want. Yes, grace is definitely there, right? But you have to, an opportunity may be staring at you in your face, but if you don't grab it, you don't do what is required to get it into your life, then it is not going to manifest. Today, I was doing a tuning for someone, and I could clearly see in his field, right, that he has a lot of opportunities, but is not willing to take the opportunity, right? So now what's the use of that opportunity if you get the opportunity, but you're not taking the opportunity? You're not saying yes. You're constantly saying, I can't, I won't. This is a problem with this. This is a problem with that. So when you're not taking it up, you're not taking up the challenge, then you can never manifest anything in your life. You have to take responsibility for yourself. I think we can stop here today.